Good morning, and welcome to the latest in our Current Briefing webinar series, where we will be talking about maintaining EV charging confidence through maintenance. I'm joined today by David Cornish and Carl Jacoby from Techniche, so good morning, and thank you both so much for joining us for this session. In a second, I'm going to hand over to Carl to kick off with the presentation. But I just quickly like to remind you all that if you have any questions during the presentation or during the Q&A that follows, just stick them in the questions box in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. We will do our best to get to as many as possible. So without further ado, Carl.
Good. Thanks, Molly, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning to talk about what we believe is a really important topic, maintaining EV charging confidence through maintenance. But maintaining EV charging confidence is not enough. We believe it's all about improving confidence, and that means improving reliability, and your customers having the confidence that your network of chargers is available and ready to use. This ultimately is going to improve your customer experience, which ultimately improves your brand. And this is what we hope to unpack for you a bit today. Also, we're looking forward to Q&A and generating some interesting discussion. But first, let me give you a brief introduction about Techniche, and then David will explore some of the key areas that we consider makes great charging experience. So our software solution has been in use for over 20 years and is trusted by some of the world's leading fuel retailers, including BP, Shell and Q8. It's used globally across about 40,000 sites to manage both predictive and reactive maintenance of their retail and forecourt assets. With the growth in adoption of EV, many of our customers are starting to reshape their business models as they grapple with the switch from ICE to EV. This is giving us the opportunity to watch and learn as our customers adopt different approaches to maintaining their EV assets. We have an automated solution to help our customers improve asset reliability and uptime, which delivers an improved customer experience, secures and grows revenues while building a strong brand. But automation is a particular area of interest for us at Techniche. EV chargers are essentially IoT assets on steroids, generating a range of error codes connected to the cloud, but complex. We envisage a future where the assets can generate their own repair tasks, both predictive and reactive, direct to the contractor to both reduce cost and time to repair. So before I hand over to David, I'd like to mention another challenge that we believe is coming for EV charging operators, and that is compliance. While not necessarily a discussion point for today, working with high voltage technology in unmanned environments has inherent risk. And then throw in some of the known risks around battery technology, so we believe appropriate plan, maintenance and documentation will be vital. As a minimum, an operator of EV chargers should be maintaining key maintenance and compliance records to provide some level of cover. So now I'll hand it over to Dave to discuss the following 5 topics: reliability, automation, customer experience, brand and revenue. Over to you, Dave.
Thanks, Carl. So what makes an EV charging network a great EV charging network? It's a network that delivers a reliable customer experience, creates a trustworthy brand, and builds a growing revenue stream. From my perspective, it's about the planning of the network, the reliability of the infrastructure, and the maintenance of the charging assets. So first up is planning. Governments around the world are targeting a huge increase in the number of public EV chargers by 2030. Here in the UK, the minimum being targeted is 300,000, which is about a 9-fold increase from where we are today. In Germany, it's 1 million, a 14-fold increase, and the rest of the EU is targeting somewhere around 6.8 million public chargers by the same year. The EV community is reporting longer queues forming at fast charging hubs than ever before. They were especially bad over the Christmas period when a greater number of EVs had been making cross-country journeys. At one hub in the UK, a queue of 40 cars formed, with some waiting over 6 hours to charge. Of course, the charger planning isn't just about getting fast and ultra-fast chargers into the ground. The location of them is just as crucial. With estimates of around 65% of UK households unable to install a home EV charger, nighttime charging could shift the whole network of charging infrastructure that's at charging hubs, destination chargers, and workplace chargers that are often dormant at night. But it needs work on pricing, safety, and reliability for this to be a workable option. So next up, reliability. From speaking to our customers, we know that global supply chain issues are constricting the supply of charging infrastructure, with at least one major manufacturer quoting a 70-week lead time. This means that many charge point operators are forced to buy their kit from whoever can get it to them quickly enough in order to minimize installation delays. In some cases, this is leading to interoperability problems, with some devices not fully following OCPP standards and the likelihood of a lower quality of charger being installed than they had planned. Increasingly, the supply of spare parts is also heavily constrained. If maintenance teams don't have a readily available stock of the most needed parts, then that can cause additional delays to fixing issues. This all adds to the already problematic amount of charger downtime and can have a negative impact on a charge operator's brand reputation, customer experience, and revenue. Availability of chargers remains the biggest anxiety reported by EV drivers, or would-be EV drivers. This is primarily driven by the EV community's real-world charging experience, where public chargers are regularly out of action for weeks at a time. The EV community is small and tech-savvy, sharing their charging experiences on apps, forums, and social media. Good experiences, as well as bad, are visible for all to see. It's really easy for a brand to get a poor reputation in these early stages in the transition to EV. Don't forget, although mass-market EVs have been available for over a decade, only about 2% of cars in the early adopter countries, such as Germany and the UK, are full electric. So what can be done to reduce the charger anxiety and help increase EV adoption? This leads us to the maintenance of EV charging networks. Firstly, let's have a quick look at the kinds of problems that affect EV chargers and how often they occur. So outside of the old IT standby of turn it off and on again that solves most remote reset issues, the major cause of charger breakdowns require a site visit to fix the issue. Things like physical damage and vandalism, emergency stop buttons being pressed, mechanical defects where the charger actually breaks down, and payment system and card reader defects that make chargers out of action. But if a pump breaks down at a fuel station, firstly, it's not often that big a deal because there are usually at least 6 or 8 more that you can pick from, and if you were to go back the next day, or even later the same day, it'd be back up and running. Fuel retailers understand how critical their pumps are to their customers, their reputation, and their bottom line. But if an EV charger breaks, it's often down for weeks, and there's usually only 1 or 2 others to use instead, so queues can start to form quickly. Today's EV chargers are amazing high-tech devices. They've benefited from huge amounts of R&D to really drive innovation that will improve the charging experience. But the supporting technology hasn't kept pace, and the tools used to manage maintenance are often immature. That's if maintenance has even been thought about at all. In our experience to date, managing the maintenance of EV chargers has been carried out manually. This typically involves a help desk team monitoring a charge point management system dashboard to see if new issues have arisen. It doesn't matter if it's a temporary comms outage or a burnt out circuit board. The alerts are pretty much all the same. The help desk then sends a flood of emails to different teams that take different actions, such as removing a charger from public-facing apps, engaging a facilities management team, third-party contractor, charger manufacturer, and sometimes local authorities. And as each email is created manually, inaccuracies can creep in the more times the message is relayed. It often takes hours, but more likely days, just to get the people and teams notified, and we haven't even had anyone look at the charger itself yet. While all this is going on, consumers can see as the charger is down, they can't charge, and the brand's reputation takes a bit of a hit. The EV charging industry is struggling to keep up with maintenance on the relatively small number of chargers that are in the ground right now. As charging networks expand, this problem is going to grow exponentially if maintenance continues to be an afterthought. How much faster, cheaper, and less hands-on could maintenance processes be if you could automatically triage and dispatch over 85% of incidents and alerts? At Techniche, our focus is the automation of the maintenance process. Our software integrates with all types of information platforms, such as charge point maintenance systems, to get notified the instant there's an issue with an asset. It grabs all of the information about the failure. Now, for EV chargers, this includes the vendor-specific error codes. We then use all this data, combine it with some system smarts and industry knowledge to automatically select the right action for each issue and automate as much as possible, removing the need for a help desk agent to get involved in everyday decision-making or communication until it's absolutely necessary. All parties involved have the most complete and accurate information needed to resolve EV charger infrastructure problems quickly and safely. Now, EV chargers are smart by default, and they mostly all talk the same language. So we're able to bring a whole new level of automation and insights using everything we've learned from over 20 years of working with fuel retailers to help charge point operators and owners get their assets back online as quickly as possible, helping to keep their uptime, revenue, and customer experience scores up and their maintenance costs down. And once the maintenance need has been addressed, what comes next? Back to Carl.
Thanks, Dave. As a quick wrap up, I just want to give you a sense of where we see the future, the importance of data and how it will provide additional value around the performance of your assets. So as we build up accurate charger information, we'll be able to provide reliability and performance insights across our customer base. For example, benchmarking EV charger brands and models will allow charge point owners and operators to better understand the more reliable models, the ones that are more consistently available, providing a higher level of customer experience, and at what cost. Furthermore, comparing the performance and lifespans of different brands and models across different locations means budget forecasting and planning is dramatically improved as trends are being monitored. As the sector becomes more competitive and improving customer experience and reducing costs becomes more pressing, proactive maintenance management of your EV assets will be critical. So thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to taking your questions. Over to you, Molly.
Thank you both. That was a really interesting presentation. So I have a couple of quick questions, but just as a reminder to the audience, if you do have anything you'd like to ask either David or Carl, just stick it in the questions box and we'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible. So just to start with, can you tell us a little more about your experience of working with EV charge point operators? David, I might hand that one to you.
Sure, thanks, Carl. Yeah, so the biggest frustration that we found with that charge point operators have is getting the information to the relevant teams as quickly as possible. There's a lot of manual processes that exist at the moment. So there's a lot of email hand-holding, email processing and things. A lot of charger systems or the management systems at the moment are, as kind of mentioned in the presentation, there are dashboards that need monitoring or emails that go out, and it's just a big chain of lots of email and manual processes, lots of on the phone calls, chasing things up, and it's just not a good process. And that's a fairly consistent message that we've seen throughout all kinds of different operators, whether that is some of the fuel majors who are switching to EV with their own charger brands, or even kind of pure play CPOs who that is their business. It's a pretty consistent problem that they have.
We have a question from Clara asking, how can data improve customer experience and what type of data is it specifically that you're talking about?
So I guess I might have a go at this one, Dave. So if you understand the importance of what we're trying to do here is maintain asset availability and uptime. So the first point is you're trying to keep your assets up and available for your customers to use as often as possible. So that ultimately then drives the customer experience piece. So, making sure that, and the automation piece that fits with that is all about trying to drive this, reducing the time to repair, reducing the time to understand when an asset is not working, and then the time to repair, and also time to cost. But then that is where you start to drive the customer experience. And I guess the other piece that we're interested in, as you start to then be able to analyse between different brands in different conditions, maybe different weather conditions, you can start to determine which charging brands or models might be suited to different environments. But again, it's all about ultimately having the chargers available for use by the customer.
And the next question from Caesar, there's 3 questions in one. How many chargers do you currently monitor? What is the uptime percentage of those chargers? And what are your services response times?
You got to go now?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So I can't give the exact number of chargers out, but it's a few thousand at the moment, mostly across the UK, Ireland, mainland Europe, and Australia and New Zealand for the most part. The uptime of those chargers, it depends where the customers are on their journey with us as they start to expand out. What we're aiming to help them with is to get to that kind of 99% uptime, which particularly in the UK, the government is kind of advocating for, and also within the US is waging for a 97% kind of thing. So that's what we're kind of aiming for, and depending on, as I said, depending on the journey that they're currently on, they're all kind of on an upward trend, which is important. For our service response times, we don't actually maintain the EV chargers themselves. We provide the software platform that does that. But due to the kind of system integrations and nice ways that systems can talk to each other, we can dispatch out work orders for somebody to visit or remote reset or whatever action needs to be taken on a charger within seconds of that error actually being reported by the charger.
Fantastic. The next question is from Gemma. She says, I work in the Highlands and Islands particularly struggle with maintenance due to access. Would your product help with this, and how can I find out more?
Dave, maybe to you.
Yeah, sure. So we do, as Carl said at the beginning, we do a lot with fuel retail, and we do a lot with fuel retail in countries that have a lot of expanse in the middle of them. Australia is a typical example. Carl's from Australia, and that's where we're kind of headquarters. There's a lot of kind of truck stops and areas that are right in the middle of the country where maintenance and access is different. In Australia, they often have to take a plane to some places to go and fix a fuel pump. And a similar kind of thing happens with EV chargers in these kind of areas. So it's definitely about the communication of them, making sure you've got the right teams that are available, and it can definitely help to minimise the downtime and the time to contact all of these different parties. And that's one of the main things that's here. To find out more, when the recording goes out, there's a nice big link that you can find. But essentially, it's technichegroup.com.
Good little plug there. And yeah, just as David said, after this, we'll send out an email where you will be able to access the recording of this, and also we'll make sure that we include details so anyone who wants to get in charge with Techniche to find out more will absolutely be able to do that. The next question is in from Oliver. He says, you've mentioned there can be several stakeholders involved with a single charge point: the landlord, the CPO, the EMSP, billing, payment, customer, local authority, etc. How can communications between these parties improve to create a better customer experience?
Over to you, Dave.
It's about making the right people know at the right time. Too often with the existing kind of way of doing things, emails go into inboxes, they go into junk quite often. And we've also seen things, especially in Germany, where their back end is actually from another country. Sometimes the emails and messages come across in a foreign language to them. So it is all about making sure that the right teams know about it and facilitating that communication as much as possible and streamlining it so that only the people involved in that fix know about it. So rather than sending out mass amounts of emails to 10 different teams because somebody will know what to do, it's about, for that problem, knowing exactly who should be involved and targeting them exactly so that it's all as streamlined as possible.
And can I just make one more comment there? Just if you keep in mind, what we're really focused around is asset uptime. So our goal is really to help the charge point operator, whoever that operator is, whether they are an owner or just operator, give them the tools to try and optimize having those charge points up and ready and available.
Fantastic. The next question is from Michael, who says, do you work with DC forecourt chargers, or do you also monitor depot AC chargers? And how do you integrate with existing back office or CRM systems when supporting an organization with their maintenance?
Yeah, we take any kind of chargers around. So we work with both the high-powered DC forecourt stuff that's available at the moment, but also the lower AC stuff that, in fact, right outside the office is a whole bunch of 22 kilowatt AC stuff. So we're agnostic in that regard, agnostic to types, agnostic to brands and all that kind of things. Integrations with back office systems are generally through the charge point management system, as that's where a lot of the data feeds come from. But if we need to talk to another CRM system to pull other data, I mean, one of the nice things about EV charging is because the assets are smart by default, as soon as they appear on a charge point management system or other CRM system, they're kind of pulled through and onboarded automatically onto the platform. It's great having assets that are smart by default. It's definitely a step up from some of the the other industries that we work in, where everything has to be kind of manually put in. So smart by default is great.
Absolutely. Yeah, just as a concept, smart by default sounds infinitely useful. The next question is from Philip. Can you explain what retail forecourts have been doing differently for the last 20 years? Are they using manual process? And if not, what are the benefits of their approaches?
So there's a whole array of things that forecourts are doing. Again, they all do different things depending on their maintenance budgets and all different kinds of things. A lot of them have got their newer pumps and things are smart, so they're starting to create tasks themselves when they go wrong or notify people. A lot of forecourt is still tasks or work orders are created by the operators on site. So they have to know what the problem is, and they have to see what is happening. So there's some kind of specialist stuff that happens there, but they are kind of hyper aware that their revenue is basically three kinds of critical assets. The pumps, obviously, the coffee machines, and the car washes is where revenue comes from, and for them. So they are hyper focused on those kind of things. So, we work with a lot of fuel retailers, and you'll see that a pump going down will be between 4 and 8 hours, and it'll be back up and running again, because they're that critical, even though there are 8 to 10 other ones on the forecourt at the same time. And to be fair, petrol powered cars have been around for 100 years, so the kind of maintenance to get to that level of kind of operational excellence has taken its time. We got the UK cut off ICE cars in 2030, so we've got 7 years to get from where we are today to really being able to nail the kind of maintenance and reliability of EV charging.
And probably one for Carl next. Do you have a distributor, or are you looking to have a distributor in Australia?
Probably not. Our head office is in Australia, but always happy to chat to you if you've got something. I can send you some contact details afterwards, or if we can share details. But we have head office and team in Australia. As a matter of fact, we have teams in Australia, Europe, and in the US as well.
And the next one from Stephen. Do you have experience with public transport depot electrification transition?
Not directly with public transport. The most that we are doing at the moment is fleet charging. So with some operators that are running their own kind of fleets of vans and things, so they always need to be available. So not public transport, but kind of a similar kind of fleet thing.
And the next question from June: do you operate in the Middle East? We're getting lots of inquiries related to car park buildings there.
So we have got some activity in the Middle East, and in fact, we're working on a few projects here now. So yeah, happy to talk about the Middle East. Absolutely.
Fantastic. The next one from Alexandra: what is the average uptime percentage when you start working with a new CPO? Where you said the goal is 99%. However, what do you think the average is without assistance from your platform?
It varies wildly. Depending on, I'm sure a lot of people have seen the different rankings for different for the different CPOs and the different brands that are out there. It also varies quite a lot by location as well. So while the kind of general platform uptime, if you take a large network as a whole, it's still quite high. It's still up in the 90s somewhere. There are individual locations and points that are down in the 70s or 80s and that kind of thing, which is problematic. If they're down for 30% of the time, then that's a lot of time that people can't charge for. So yeah, I guess chargers themselves are actually pretty reliable. There's a lot of transient problems that occur, but when they do break down, it's that aspect that is really where we're kind of focusing on. I mean, all the remote resets and stuff is kind of just bread and butter. Yep, get them off and on again. So yeah, individual chargers and individual locations is where the problem lies for these guys mostly.
Just for my own curiosity, you said charge points are very reliable by and large. Do you think there's a PR problem with them still, where lots of people who are looking to transition to EVs are concerned about the reliability of the wider EV charging network? And do you think there's stuff that as an industry we need to do to change that conversation?
Yeah, I think that to a certain extent there absolutely is a PR problem. There's some stories get blown out of proportion for how bad they are. The chargers themselves are pretty reliable, and that is fundamentally true. The biggest reason that we see people go out to one of the biggest reasons we see people go out to the chargers for is people drive into them. They're different to a petrol forecourt. Usually your petrol pumps are on to the side of the car, so the left, the right, and EV chargers tend to be in the front of the spaces. Turns out a lot of people can't drive, so there's a lot of bent and broken chargers that need to be taken up and repaired before they can be put back to ground. So the chargers themselves are reliable. So there is a bit of a PR problem, but there's still a maintenance issue to be sorted.
Absolutely. The next question is any kind of battery issue that can be seen in the middle of the road, what will the necessary troubleshoot be then?
So I'm not entirely sure how to answer that one, but I'll take a stab at it anyway. So I mean, we will deal with anything that is related to the EV charging network. So we're not just concerned with the chargers themselves. There's a whole load of power generation equipment that's around that. So there are substations and there are battery storage for the grid, and there's all the assets have got all the chargers are starting to get, especially for charging hubs, canopies and CCTV and lighting and all that stuff. So all of those kind of assets are kind of catered for, and if there are specific troubleshooting steps for something like a battery, then those kind of things are all surfaced within the platform. So if we're not able to say auto restart it because we don't know we should do, then that can be something that can be taken by people on site.
Fantastic. Another question what kind of insight and intelligence do you gain when analysing the maintenance of an EV charging network?
Yeah, so there's a huge amounts that you can get from the EV charging network. A lot of data can be built from the OCPP feeds. So every event that happens on an EV charger, so all the charging starts and charging stops, and all the payment starts and stops and charger faults, all of that kind of stuff really allows you to build up a really good picture of the reliability of individual chargers, but also brands and models and kind of things. You get things like the number of charges between failures rather than time between failure, the charges between failures, and how many kilowatts or megawatts they're able to deliver before they fail. So there's the next stage from as Carl was kind of mentioning, from once you've kind of solved the maintenance problem, is that benchmarking aspect. It is being able to know that if you're going to put your thousands of pounds or dollars down, that you're buying the right kit that is reliable from the off, because people have already used it and they've already had it in similar places and similar climates to yourself.
Mm-hmm. And probably what will be our last question, but how often should we perform preventative maintenance for EV chargers? During preventative maintenance, what are the major points to be checked?
This varies quite dramatically between manufacturers. There are some that are just annual checks, and they're almost as much as just wipe it down with a rag, make sure it's clean, make sure it's not cracked, and all of that kind of stuff. And there are some others that require filters changing. There are air-cooled ones, the oil and water-cooled ones, and passive-cooled ones. At the moment, that seems to be the major kind of preventative maintenance that needs checking. We think that what's probably going to come in the next few years, once we start to get towards 2030, is definitely some more compliance side of things. These are EV chargers are safe, but they're also incredibly high power, and they connect to EV cars that have got massive batteries in them. When an EV goes up in flames, boy, do you know about it. So I think there's going to be some additional regulations that are coming by countries to ensure that those checks are kind of carried out and that all the chargers are safe.
So, unfortunately, I think that's probably all that we have time for today. Thank you again to both Carl and David for a really interesting presentation. Thank you everyone who's joined and everyone who's asked questions. I'm sorry we haven't got to them all. As I mentioned previously, there will be a recording of this available on the Current website, and we will send around an email after the session, which will give you access to all of this. And if you do have any burning questions, any additional questions that you'd like to put to Carl, David, or the rest of the Techniche team, please just get in touch and we will do our best to sort of pass that on and make sure that those get answered as quickly as possible. But beyond that, I hope you all have a lovely Thursday. Keep an eye on Current for the next briefing webinar. Thank you, Carl, David, and all the best. Have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.